The future of cancer treatment is on the horizon, but can we afford it, regulate it, and deliver it at scale? Hi, everyone. I'm David Williams, president of strategy consulting firm Health Business Group and host of the HealthBiz Podcast, where I interview top healthcare leaders about their lives and careers. My guest today is Dr. Jason Bock. He's co-founder and CEO of CTMC, a joint venture between National Resilience and MD Anderson Cancer Center, which accelerates development and manufacturing of innovative cell therapies to cure cancer. Do you like this show? If so, please subscribe and leave a review. Jason, welcome to the HealthBiz Podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on, David. Looking forward to the discussion.
Usually we sometimes say, this isn't rocket science or we're not trying to cure cancer here, but we are, at least the latter. So, no expectations, but let's jump in. So cell and gene therapies, very exciting. They hold huge promise. And I wonder, to what extent has that promise been realized in cancer care?
Yeah. So first, let's distinguish cell and gene therapy. Even though they get lumped together, CGT, or cell and gene, it's sort of like these words get linked together, but really they're distinct therapeutic modalities. And so cell therapy is where we take a patient's own, typically immune cells, and for autologous cell therapy, we take them out of their body, do the engineering in our manufacturing facility, and then return them to the same patient. There's a lot of different flavors of that, but that's the most prevalent one right now and commercially available.
And so the autologous refers to the auto being
self.
The self, yep.
And so, if you zoom out, what's happening when a patient gets cancer is, over time, some cells accumulate a series of mutations and figure out a way to avoid the immune system. The immune system is constantly looking for these cells and pruning them back. But unfortunately, occasionally, the cancer cells win out and get a little out of control. That's when you actually have cancer. And what we're really trying to do in many ways is a very holistic and, almost like natural way of reestablishing that equilibrium. So we're taking these cells from a patient's body that normally are surveilling for cancer and amping them up with some engineering to go back into that very same person and reestablish that equilibrium. And what we call that, this fancy term equilibrium, is essentially trying to cure cancer and get these patients healthy again.
Nice. So it's a great concept, and it's good to, distinguish between, just to take CGT and say, cell therapy, let's focus on that. Are we there yet? Is it happening?
It's always a journey, not a destination. In terms of treating cancer, it's not a monolithic disease. There's a lot of different aspects of it. But what's amazing is the progress we've made in cell therapy over, say, the last 7 or 8 years. And I think because the initial progress was so amazing that the expectations are sky high for cell therapy. I love that, because we should have these high aspirations. One of the ways these aspirations were set was one of the first patients, actually the first pediatric patient treated with a CD19 CAR-T, has become literally the poster child for the industry. Her name is Emily Whitehead. When she was 6 years old, 6 years old, she was diagnosed with childhood leukemia. And unfortunately, all available treatments failed to halt her cancer. And so after a few years of trying these available treatments, her parents were basically told, take her home, here's the number for hospice, and just enjoy the short time you have left with her, 3 to 6 months. Luckily, her parents didn't give up and found us that a new clinical trial had just opened for CAR T cells just 2 weeks before this. And so she was enrolled as the first patient. They removed her some of her T cells, engineered those in the lab, reinfused those to her. She had a very severe reaction to those cells, actually went into a coma and was near death. But then quite a lot of fight in that little girl. She came out of the coma, and David, 30 days later, they scanned her for cancer. And where before the treatment, her body was essentially riddled with cancer, at that first scan, it was undetectable. And that treatment that she had been given, she's never gotten another treatment for cancer since then. 12 years later, she's undergraduate at University of Pennsylvania, has never gotten another treatment for cancer, and has her whole life in front of her.
So is the nature of, in a lot of fields, the progress tends to be incremental. If you have a car, it gets a little bit better gas mileage, it's like a little lower drag, coefficient, et cetera. And in cancer, sometimes it's like that too. But with cell therapy, is the nature of it that you have some patients that had, so you're saying they're on the verge of hospice or in hospice and can be cured, and they might, they're not even a cancer patient after that? Or is there more of this sort of incremental progress? How do we think about it?
Yeah. What differentiates immunotherapy in general? Immunotherapy being where we utilize the body's immune system to fight cancer rather than sort of directly trying to poison the cancer with something like chemotherapy or radiation. So what distinguishes immunotherapy is if you look at the response rate, there's an initial response. There's some patients who over the first 3, 6, 9 months, the treatment does fail. But then what's the signature of immunotherapy is there's this very long tail of patients who are long-term responders because you've essentially trained the immune system. It's still there. It's still surveilling and reestablishing that equilibrium with the body not having cancer anymore. And so that's what CAR-T, being the most advanced kind of immunotherapy, is able to do. And not everyone is cured. Unfortunately, we're working on getting those response rates up, but there's a very high fraction of patients who are essentially cured and don't need another treatment. And this is with a single dose therapy. That's what's really transformative about cell therapy is these single dose treatments with curative intent. There's a lot of other cancer treatments which do improve what's called progression-free survival. So patients, have 3 more months before their cancer improves, or 6 more months, 9 more months, hopefully as long as possible. But with cell therapy, there's a large fraction of patients who are long-term responders.
So as we look at the trajectory here, is it basically finding a ways that CAR-T can apply to more patients and that we have more of those success stories like the Whitehead example that you just gave? Or there's some new technologies that come along, either other forms of immunotherapy or changes within cell therapy itself? What do you see happening?
So much. All of the above, really. So that first generation of treatments targeted a specific antigen, CD19, present on B cells. And so where we've made the most progress with cell therapies is in the treatment of B cell leukemias and lymphomas. And that's been transformative. That if you go to the major cancer, hematologic cancer conferences, all of the exciting discussions are about CAR-T. And it's established as a transformational treatment there. It's changed the treatment landscape. Now, there will be incremental improvements in that. The field is working on moving CAR-T to earlier lines of treatment, as well as expanding the number of cancers it works on. So there's been a lot of excitement over the last few years in a different antigen than CD19, BCMA, that targets a cancer called multiple myeloma. and have seen remarkable progress in that. And that treatment has shown efficacy as early as second line and is moving even to first line. So there will be those expansions, moving treatment to earlier lines, expanding the number of cancers. I think in general, though, the big step we're trying to make is moving this from the blood cancers to solid tumors. And solid tumors represent about 90% of all cancer cases. So we've had this transformation go on in hematologic malignancies. That's about 10%. And so moving the cell therapies to trying to treat solid tumors is, I think, the big next step.
Got it. All right. So let's say you manage to get into solid tumors and have this applied to like a large percentage of cancer patients. Then, so let's just say, I've studied economics. They say, assume that part of it. Yeah. Someone said to me, well, if you had a magic wand, I do have a magic wand. So I'm just going to decide to wave it. So I'll wave it and say solid cancers, can also be addressed this way. And now what's the challenge? So I could imagine, anything you do in general, but in medicine in particular, do small scale, like a lot of these cell therapies might have originally been, in one particular physician's, lab or one place in the world you could go and do it. And then you try to scale it up, make a company out of it and so on. That's hard enough. But what if you've got a generally applicable technology? Then how are we going to change the whole cancer ecosystem in the country?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And I hope that's a problem and a challenge we get to tackle. I think there's a lot of technical and scientific and biologic challenges with applying cell therapy to solid tumors. I think there's been a lot of progress made in just the last year or two in that regard. So still, it'll be a big spell when you wave that wand to make that happen. But we're making progress there. I think we shouldn't underestimate when I use the word transformational. It's a whole different way of a healthcare system, because if you look at cancer, it's for the most part treated as a chronic disease. You have to come back. You have cycles of chemotherapy or different radiation cycles, and you are basically constantly in and out of the hospital or getting different treatments and things. And with cell therapy, while it's very intense, it's about a 2-week treatment cycle. And then if it works, you're done and you have your life back. Emily just goes in for a scan every once in a while. She's not taking any maintenance treatments or anything like that. So that kind of transformation affects all aspects of the healthcare system. How we set up systems for one-time treatments, how we cover those from the financial and insurance systems, as well as what we focus on a lot is how we manufacture and scale those. So happy to talk about any one of those aspects.
Well, let's talk about, I think it's probably the most relevant one is sort of manufacturing and scale. But so I'm going to go in the other direction and talk about something I know a little bit more about. So in Boston, where I live, you've got Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Yep. And they have been affiliated for a long time with Brigham and Women's Hospital, now part of MGB, et cetera. And they broke off and are going to the BI. It's a lot of local stuff happening. But one interesting factor there is that one reason that the Brigham didn't want to have this happen is that 45% of their surgeries are cancer surgeries. And so it's a gigantic amount of activity and revenue or expense, depending on how you look at it. Now, I know, cell therapy, one of the challenges, you hear the price tag for, wow, that's expensive. But how do the overall economics look if my wand has been, waved and the magical spell said, and say, let's actually go and say that it is this 2 weeks. You don't have necessarily surgery. Maybe we don't have proton beam. We don't have a lot of infrastructure.
Right.
What's the overall structure look like, and what's even the cost?
Yeah. So let me There was a real ASCO is a big oncology conference every year where all the oncology research and leaders get together and discuss. So there was a really interesting interview by the CEO, given by the CEO of Legend Pharmaceuticals, which is one of the makers of CAR T treatment for multiple myeloma. And he got asked about the cost. And so they had done this study where they were trying to move the product they make is called Carvykti. They were trying to move Carvykti from later line treatment to second line treatment. And I think I'm getting all the details right of his interview. And so to do that, they had an active control arm in that study, which was basically, it's the colloquial term is dealer's choice. It basically means that clinician can give any treatment they want to the patient, the best available, current commercial treatments. And then the active arm will be giving the cell therapy, Carvykti. And so they had this 2-arm study with about 80 patients in each arm, so a pretty good number of patients. And then they followed the patients for 2 years. And so from an efficacy and safety point of view, the Carvykti arm outperformed standard of care. Okay, but your question was about cost. What's interesting in that study, they were able to look at basically costs in a controlled way because it was in a clinical study. And for the Carvykti arm, all-in costs for the treatment, for subsequent doctor's visits, hospitalizations, whatever, all-in cost over 2 years was around $700,000. Okay, a lot of money. But these are, pretty sick cancer patients. For the sort of standard of care arm, it was 1.3 million. And so dramatically more expensive that accrued over those 2 years. And so I think that hopefully that example shows the the overall cost effectiveness of a single dose treatment. Now, we can look at exactly for that standard of care arm where those costs are distributed. Just as you were saying, some of it's from the pharmacy, some of it's from radiology doing more scans, some of it's from hospitalization, some of it is from other drugs that they were prescribed and things. Whereas in the cell therapy arm, most of it was for that one-time therapy up front. And so, understanding that shift will be disruptive. And I think part of the challenge of getting cell therapies more widely accessible to patients is some of that disruption. Because disruption in healthcare, is hard. And there's a lot of entrenched interests, and this is the way we do things, and this is how financially everything holds together. Cell therapy upends that. Now, my hope is that at the end of the day, they're more cost-effective treatments, and they make patients healthy for longer periods of time. Like, I think if we looked, I'm sure they have the data. If you looked at the quality of life of those two groups of patients over those 2 years, it would be dramatically different too. If you're in and out of the hospital all the time versus, okay, I got, a week or 2 in the hospital and then I'm done.
Got it. So it sounds like, I went in the direction that, we said away from what you do, which as I understand is how to make some of these therapies actually, how to scale them up and make them effective. Does that include cost effectiveness? Give me a sense of the kind of the economics of actually putting these together and how that may change at some more scale.
Right. So we shouldn't underestimate the challenge of this new modality and how to build an entire infrastructure and supply chain around it. It's a whole different approach when you are making an individual treatment for each patient, right? For most therapeutics, small molecules, pills we all take, or even monoclonal antibodies, which are injections, or protein therapeutics like Ozempic, you can produce huge batches of those, produce hundreds of thousands of doses at a time, and then just distribute those to pharmacies. So you can have a very centralized supply chain, which we're gotten very good at optimizing. For cell therapies, where each batch is for an individual patient, it's a completely different model of manufacturing. And it's going to take us time. It's been slower than I would have hoped, but it's also reasonable to expect that model is going to take us more time to develop. One of the foundational elements that's different that we think is important is the shape and location of that supply chain. So, as I mentioned before, with very centrally produced products, you can produce those anywhere in the world in a big factory and then just ship the product to the hospitals wherever they need them, the pharmacies. But when you're making these individual, very personalized treatments, one of our theses is that proximity to the patients, which are essentially the raw materials or where we starting point for each of the batches, has a lot of benefits. And so when we started CTMC, it was part of MD Anderson Cancer Center, and we're in close proximity. With this camera view, I can't see, but I can look right out my window here, and I can see MD Anderson 2 blocks down the street. And so when we produce a batch for MD Anderson, the shipping is putting it on a shuttle bus that gets to us in 5 minutes. It's not arranging airfare and transport and all of that. And I think over time, the closer relationship between healthcare providers, hospitals, clinics, and manufacturing sites for cell therapies is going to be an important solution to reducing waiting times and costs overall. So we believe regionalized manufacturing that is connected to hospital geographies is going to be an important way of scaling cell therapies.
Let's talk about the impact of policy changes. There's a lot going on in Washington, D.C. and at the state level, but let's focus on Washington regarding healthcare policy. And how does that kind of focus down into the cell and gene therapy area?
Yeah, I think while there's talk about disruption, there's a lot of disruption going on. I think there's a lot of opportunities for cell therapies, and we've seen some very positive signs. One thing that's obviously important to this administration is, onshoring of manufacturing. And by definition, when you have this regionalized manufacturing supporting geographies, it's going to be located specifically within the U.S. Also for other countries, which are also getting on board with, having control over their healthcare. They want manufacturing in their country as well. Cell therapy leads itself very much to benefit from that regionalized manufacturing. And so I think there's a lot of appetite, I think, from the US, but as well as other geographies for building cell therapy manufacturing capabilities. And we're in discussion with a number of different major hospital networks in the US as well as internationally to help them establish that. So that's one aspect. The other is, in the US, a real fresh look at are we providing patients the most impactful care? It goes really, David, to your point earlier, are we just extending life by a month or 2 months? Or are we really trying to do transformation that is really impacting their overall health? And so there was a remarkable kind of town hall with the leadership of HHS, FDA, CMS, that came together specifically to talk about cell and gene therapy. This was, I think, in June. And they voiced tremendous support for the cell therapy industry and really breathed a lot of excitement into the field. And we've seen some aspects of, hey, smaller trials where we know these treatments are very impactful, let's get them commercially approved quicker, and then have follow-on studies after commercial approval to fully understand them. But don't put so much onus on these very transformational therapies to prove everything when you're in the clinical stage. I think that kind of um, mindset will have a very positive impact for transformational therapies like cell and gene therapies.
When we look at the overall healthcare policy and spending and legislation, what I see is something that is a little bit less enlightened. So when we see that there's these big cuts going on in Medicaid, perhaps Medicare, depending on how you look at it, it's not being done by having new technologies or breakthroughs in how conditions are treated or paid for. It's really putting up more bureaucratic barriers to people getting access. That's a lot of why there's going to be fewer people on Medicaid. That's really accounting for a lot of the savings. So when we look at cell therapy, first of all, you will get caught up into that to some extent anyway. But let's talk about maybe the payment models and what could work. So let's take it as a given, the say $700,000 versus $1.3 million example that you gave before. Others won't take it as a given, but let's take it as twice as expensive to have something that's worse, but is more in the current, you call it dealer's choice, standard of care, whatever it may be. The payment system is set up around that, the old model, and so it's easier to pay $1.3 million in the existing model than $700,000 in the new one.
Yes.
Are we seeing alternative payment models that are promising, or like what needs to happen to be able to have something that logically makes sense actually work in the system financially?
Yeah, exactly. Fantastic question. I think there's you framed it so well. I like the way that you say that you're paying more for worse outcomes. That's something we got to fix. Now, the challenge for us, I think, is that it's a little bit of a it's just due to the way our system is set up, and with these upfront costs for a one-time, potentially curative treatment. So, most of our healthcare is provided through employer-based insurance, and if you change employers, you change typically insurance companies. And so the problem for US and the challenge is, hey, if you, going back to our earlier example, if you go in and you have multiple myeloma and you get the cell therapy and you have to pay for that upfront, the $700K upfront, and then 6 months later you change jobs, well, the insurance company who pays that upfront cost doesn't sort of reap the benefits of like those lower costs longer term. Whereas if it's more, you're paying a higher amount, but it's like ongoing for those 2 years, at least those costs, can sort of follow you through your different companies and insurance companies. So I think it's a little bit of a like quirk in how our insurance reimbursement works. Now, there's been some interesting developments, and David, this is a little outside my area. I'm more about like scaling up and making these therapies. But CMS has some interesting new initiatives with states to try and come up with ways of bridging this gap. Maybe moving to more like I think you were intimating subscription models. And so, I think I think they would have tremendous value in hey, if you get an upfront, if you get a one-time treatment, it's almost like you have a subscription to that. Every year that you're cancer-free, you continue to pay. That defers some of the upfront cost. And if these treatments are as good as I'm portraying them, long-term, it makes for financial viability for the industry, and overall will be cost-effective for patients in the overall system. So we just have to figure out a way of getting all those things connected. There's a lot of entrenched interests which are used to the way of doing things. And so, but I've been encouraged by some recent pilot studies that are ongoing.
Well, beyond the scope of this conversation, but it will also be interesting to look at international models for this, because as you were mentioning, this industry is going to spring up around the world
Yep.
because it needs to be local, and each one of those health systems has their own way of paying, which are usually different here. Sometimes what I found is that we complain here about, it's too short term, and then you look abroad and they also have these short term problems as well, and less money overall. But there should be some innovation, I think, that we can learn from on the payment side as well from elsewhere.
Yeah. And if I could pick up on that too, because I think innovation too on the payment side, but also innovation on the product side is going to continue. So these are the first generation products. And I think, if we put this in context, nowadays, monoclonal antibodies are very standard of care. And everyone's like, oh, monoclonal antibodies, great. They help a lot of patients. They are, a lot of them are in clinical development. There's a lot of innovation that goes on there. They're profitable for pharmaceutical companies. So it builds a good, positive ecosystem. But that wasn't always the case. We're 40 years in to the monoclonal antibody modality. And so those first 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years of monoclonal antibodies were very much fit and start. And they were, a lot of the same things I hear about cell therapies. They cost too much. How are we going to administer them? Patients won't take them. All have sort of fallen by the wayside as we innovated both on the product side, made safer antibodies, made more potent antibodies, and on the manufacturing side, figured out how to reduce the cost of goods. And the same will happen with cell therapies. We're going to make better products. We're going to figure out how to make them more successfully and at lower cost. And we're going to figure out how to make them more accessible to patients. So to me, it's an inevitability. It's just how long it's going to take for us to get there. But we're going to get there.
So I do have a magic wand, but I also have a long enough memory to recall that 40 years ago, actually, when this came out. And I seem to recall a cover story on Time magazine. It would actually be interesting to go back and find that. And they're talking about the promise of it. A lot of it was focused at the time on, is this a cure for cancer, et cetera. And be interested to see what they talked about in terms of the overall economics. And the system we weren't taking up as much of the GDP with healthcare as we are now, but it might be interesting to go and learn some lessons from that.
I mean, if you remember back, this is when most therapies were given as pills. Antibodies have to be injected, usually an IV infusion. And, so many people, this is 30 years ago, so many people are like, hey, there's not enough infusions here. You cannot administer wide enough treatments via IV. It's just like, unless you can make antibodies orally available, it's never going to go anywhere. And today it's, the best-selling products in the world and the most transformational therapies for cancer and other diseases are monoclonal antibodies.
Nice. Jason, I'm going to end on a question that I ask everybody, which is whether you have a book that you would recommend to our audience.
Oh, good question, David. Actually, wait a minute.
Yeah, like even if you have it in stock, even better. Yeah. But okay.
I forgot you were going to ask me, but this book, I really like this book. Okay, so free advertising. A Cure Within. It's very approachable. And basically each chapter, the author talked with a luminary in the immunotherapy field and just got him to explain the historical context for what their insight was that moved the field forward. Because to me, it's very, it really sets the context that 30 years ago, there was a widely held belief in oncology that the immune system had nothing to do with cancer surveillance and anything. A lot of the chemotherapy drugs we give to patients today sort of, kill off the immune system as a byproduct, unfortunately. And these immuno-oncologists in the 90s, even in the early 2000s, were a bit of an outcast group. At these big cancer conferences, they would be in the basement, like huddled together, talking about their latest discoveries. And then a number of these guys continued to push through the dark times. And whether it was Jim Allison, who's at MD Anderson and Nobel laureate, coming up with the whole concept of checkpoint inhibitors, or other approaches, it's been revolutionary for the field to understand the impact of the immune system on cancer. And so this book is very approachable for that history from these individuals and what their perspective was from the dark days, why they continued to believe and push the whole field forward to open our eyes to the power of the immune system for cancer.
Excellent. Well, that's it for yet another episode of the HealthBiz Podcast. My guest today has been Dr. Jason Bock. He's co-founder and CEO of CTMC, which is a joint venture between National Resilience and MD Anderson Cancer Center, focused on accelerating development and manufacturing of innovative cell therapies to cure cancer. Did you like the show? I hope you will subscribe and leave a review. And meanwhile, Jason, thank you so much.
David, thank you. And hey, use that magic wand very judiciously.
Will do.